there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we are kicking off the month of July here on the podcast.
July timber.
Oh.
There's too many months with only although July has 2 syllables, I guess.
You just added
July.
This is a late night recording for us, so it's going to get really strange, I get that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're kicking things off for a new month. And so this month we're going to be talking about all things YA thriller. So young adult, like mystery thrillers specifically. Because I don't know if anyone else has picked up on this, but if you go to the bookstore at this point and you get away from, other than YA fantasy, the second thing that you're going to find are thrillers where a bunch of teenagers die.
Yeah, like if you're in the YA section, it
really
started becoming really big, a few years ago.
You get one or the other, I find.
Definitely.
Like if it's not fantasy, then it's like a thriller, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, I just had an idea of an episode we could have done for this month.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, I'll tell you about it after.
Anyway, we're kicking things off with an adaptation. Today anyway, to kick things off, we're going to be talking about the 2021 adaptation of There's Someone Inside Your House. It's a long title, the more often I say it.
Yeah, and I had no idea what this was until you brought it up.
Yeah, so I've read this book, which is why I also was aware that it was happening when they actually announced that there was an adaptation of it. And so it's based on I think it's a 2017 novel from an author named Stephanie Perkins, who I think largely writes YA teen thrillers and stuff like that. I know she's written a couple of other ones too, but this is the only book of hers that I've read. The movie, I'm going to tell you right now, was a Netflix adaptation, a direct Netflix adaptation, and it currently has a 4.9 out of 10 on IMDb and 47% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, I felt like it deserved a bit more than that.
Yeah, it's not that bad, guys.
No, it's really not.
Don't get me wrong, overall, is it middle of the road? Yeah. It is kind of middle of the road.
It is, but it was a good watch. It was interesting the whole way through. I was captivated.
At least it was fast paced the whole way through, and you weren't just oh my god, who cares what's happening right now?
It was definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah, well, you know what? Shireen managed to guess who the killer was within the first 20 minits of the movie.
I was quite impressed with myself.
She's very impressed with herself. Yeah. It's good. You can give yourself snaps. That was pretty good. Yeah, there you go. Right, so for the uninformed or uninitiated, There's Someone Inside Your House takes place in a fictional town in Nebraska called Osborne, which is a very small town. You can tell there's probably maybe 10,000 people live there, probably less.
Lots of corn.
So many cornfields. And follows a series of murders that begin to occur within that small town of different high school students, essentially, at the high school there. And as each person is killed, at the same time, it's revealed that they had some sort of deep, dark secret that they're harboring. And so the killer appears to be trying to bring those secrets to light, essentially. And the protagonist, her name is Makani. She moved to Osborne from Hawaii, maybe a couple of years prior, essentially, she's been there for, and she also is trying to escape her own deep, dark secret and a past. Reinvent herself, exactly, that's it, and she becomes a partial target, as do her friends and all the other students at the school, for this killer, and everybody's trying to kind of work and unmask who this person could possibly be.
Now that you've said this line about, the killer is trying to, bring to light everyone's deep, dark secrets, yeah. I'm okay, yeah, I guess, that makes sense.
Well, that is what they're doing.
They are, yeah. But, I watched this with zero idea of what I was watching, sure. First of all, which is my favorite way of watching a movie. It also turns me into the most annoying person in the planet.
She asks so many questions. She's what's this about?
What's that?
What does that have to do with
that? Why is that? And then, meanwhile, I also keep glancing at my phone every so often, so I, completely lose track of what's going on. Anyway.
I don't find you do that as much as you used to.
Yeah.
You used to spend, half a movie on your phone.
Megan used to be so mad.
Well, I'd be how are we going to talk about this? You're not even watching it.
To her credit, she would never yell at me, though.
No, you're welcome.
But, yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that. But
okay, now that I've said something that apparently stuck with you.
Right. So watching this, I'm what the fuck is tying together these murders?
Yeah.
I guessed who the killer was within the first 20 minutes just based on this person's way of acting.
It's honestly, it's a little bit like if Gossip Girl were also a murderer.
Right, but it's also kind of like, but why? You know?
Yeah.
Like, the whole way through the movie, you're like, I don't get it. Like,
well, I mean, okay, spoiler alert for everybody. Honestly, the motive's not that good.
No.
Which I can understand why people were probably disappointed with the reveal and the ending of this film to a degree, because they're like, oh, really? That's it? Okay.
I think that's why it got 49%, because up until that point, you're like, ooh, I wonder what it is.
Yes, yeah. But when you kind of realize really what the reason is, you're like, oh, okay.
Lame.
Teenager shit. Anyway. Yeah, so the like cold open of the movie, there's like a football player named Jackson who gets home and is on the phone with his friend and, you know, talking about just taking like a pregame nap before there's some sort of game at the high school, whatever. Americans love football. I don't know. Go sports.
I don't get it.
Go sports, I guess. And he is confused when he gets home at first because his parents and his sibling or whatever are meant to not be at home, but like the little like egg timer in the kitchen is on the counter, and he's like, what the fuck? But he ignores it because he's a teenage boy and he's dumb, I guess.
He's like, I don't bake.
I would walk out of the house if nobody answered me, but that egg timer was on, I'd be like, I'm leaving.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. You'd like get in your car and like
and leave. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But he is a dumbass and he goes to sleep, wakes up, and you can tell it's been hours, even though I'm sure he was only supposed to take like an hour-long nap, and he's very clearly late for the game. Trying to get his stuff together, his phone has disappeared, and the egg timer is sitting on his nightstand. Again, my ass would be terrified.
Oh, absolutely. And this guy is just like, you know what? I'm going to like assert my dominance and then figure out who this is.
I gotta go. Yeah, that's it. And also he discovers like his pickup truck has disappeared, so he can't actually leave because it looks like he lives out in a pretty rural area. So he goes back inside, starts like taking a look at things, and all along the walls in like one of the bedrooms or whatever, and then in the closet door that he opens up are all of these photos that are stills from a video that someone took of basically a hazing that he was part of on another student that went really wrong for whatever reason, where he
like beat the shit out of them. Yeah.
He beat the shit out of this student who is alive. We see him. He's fine. But like it was obviously a really severe beating. And so there's a killer in the closet who's lured him in there, who like slits his Achilles tendons and then kills him. And you're like, what's happening?
Yeah,
but the killer...
Like, ooh, cold open.
Yeah.
And you're like, obviously it's the person who, like, he hazed.
Yeah,
right?
that's
like,
it. But it's shown as this is happening, that kid he also plays on the football team, his name's Caleb's like running a pass right at that exact
touchdown.
moment, so he's not there.
And the thing that this killer keeps doing every time he murders somebody is he sends like a video out to like everyone, or like a text out to everybody, so everybody instantly knows that this person is dead and how they died.
Well, no, it's not how they died. He sends out a thing to show like what was shitty about that person is what their secret was. So he sent the hazing video as like a mass message to everyone, right? Everybody gets it. And when this person is killing each individual that they're choosing to kill, they have a 3D printed mask on that looks like that person's face, the person who is being murdered. So it's like they're looking into their own soul, whatever, blah, blah, as they're being killed. I think it's supposed to be poetic.
They just don't execute it very well, people.
It's like, a little shaky. But anyway, so, you know, obviously everybody's quite shocked after this happens. The police start questioning kids to figure out who could have done this. Everyone thinks, even though, again, he was literally running a pass at that exact moment, everyone thinks it's this kid Caleb, and that he was targeted by this guy Jackson to start off with because he's gay.
Right.
Since this is a small
Jackson
town...
was gay?
No, Caleb.
Oh, Caleb.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So at this exact... in the cafeteria the next day, we're fully given to understand that obviously this is a small town in Nebraska, so the vast majority of the student population are white. There's not much diversity in terms of... racial diversity, or just diversity in terms of, you know, LGBTQ representation and things like that.
I mean, no, but then you've also got like the one person who's literally shouting it out about everybody constantly, you know? And it's like, I appreciate it, but at the same time, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, her character's a little bit... Well, it's the writing. Some of the writing in this movie is very heavy-handed, and so they have this character, her name is Alex, and she's like... she's the person who's there to be like, look at this, we're being targeted, look at this lack of diversity and things like that. But they make her sound a little bit ridiculous. Like no teenage girl would speak this way about this, you know?
Constantly be on about this.
Yeah, it's a bit much. That's it. So the next day we meet the lead, Makani, and her friends, who consist of herself, Alex, this kid, Rodrigo, who we see pretty much right from the beginning has some sort of pill addiction. We don't know what it is yet. Zach, whose dad is like this really, really rich developer in town who everybody hates because his dad's constantly buying up people's property for like pennies on the dollar, making a ton of money, and basically kicking them out of their homes.
Yeah.
And there's Makani herself, and Darby, who's a non-binary student who's part of their friend group, who's immediately targeted by this girl,
oh my God,
Katie, the next day, who decides to take a moment speaking about Jackson, who was killed literally yesterday, to make it about herself, and she reads out part of her apparent essay that she wrote to Cornell, which is speaking about oppression and diversity, and decides to single out Darby for that.
And like just says about how impressed she is with Darby for speaking about
and essentially compares them to an alien, which is something else. So and tries to make that like a positive. Anyway, so we kind of get an idea of who these people are right away. You meet Oliver, or Ollie, not long after that. He's like the weird kid at school. He's all dressed in black and everybody thinks he's going to shoot up the school kind of thing because he's weird, and apparently he had behavioral problems as a child, whatever that means.
And his brother is the deputy.
His brother's the sheriff's deputy. All the kids are being questioned about Jackson's murder to see if, like, maybe they noticed anything strange going on, if anybody would have any information about anything, you know, whatever it is. And there's supposed to be a memorial service happening. Oh, that's not true. Sorry, the memorial service is first. So there's a memorial service that's meant to be taking place at the church for Jackson and that shitty girl, Katie, who's like a racist and a homophobe.
But she's organizing it for extra credit, yes, I would assume.
Probably. And to look good. To look better than she is. So she's setting up everything at the church before everyone gets there in the morning, and is also quickly confronted by the killer, who puts out into the world that she had essentially recorded several episodes of a podcast in which she was like spouting like very racist rhetoric and things like that, and being generally horrible and sounding a lot like a neo-Nazi essentially.
Yeah, and she's like, I posted it anonymously.
Yeah. So she's confronted by the killer, who chases her into a church pew and murders her in there, and then strings her up like a lynching essentially.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucked up.
Like that girl really wanted to live. Like she got like stabbed in the guts and like ran around the church.
Yeah, she did really take a running leap to try to get away from it. And then of course the priest and everyone else shows up and finds her like that. So at this point now we're like, okay, now we've got like a proper event taking place. So yeah, all the students and stuff are called in to see if they knew anything about Jackson and Katie, if they ever saw them arguing with anybody, saw them having any problems with anyone, like anything that would indicate who could have done something like this. And this is when we are led to understand that over the past summer before the school year started, Makani and Ollie, this kid who's like the deputy's brother, they had like a thing over the summer. In the book there's more detail about it. I think she was working part-time, and they like met outside basically where their job was and stuff like that, and it was sort of, at first they were just like smoking together, and then it kind of developed into something else essentially.
They were in love.
Anyway, but then the school year started, and because essentially like what he says is he's like, right, like you know, wanted to go back to being normal, even though you obviously have your own shit going on and you're not very normal.
Yeah.
And you just decided that you wanted to pretend that I didn't exist because it makes it easier for you to maintain that image of being seemingly normal.
Poor Ollie.
I know, I feel bad for him.
I really feel bad for him. Like the whole time we were watching this, because we watched it with my husband and her fiance, and they were like, it's totally him, like he's the shooter, he's the killer or whatever. And I'm like, I feel bad for Ollie.
No, I know. It's just so, it's too obvious of a choice. Let's be real.
And also he was like obviously so in love with Makani. Like
yeah.
He wouldn't do any shit like that.
No. So, Anyway, they take off together. They're like fooling around in the car, but Zach, the rich kid whose dad's the developer, his dad's out of town, and he's having a party at his house that he's calling a secret party, and the whole point of the party is to get everyone to go there and reveal allegedly their deepest, darkest secrets, and then everyone's will be out in the open, so then it won't be an issue for the killer anymore to be revealing them because everyone will have told us everything. Right. At this party, we also get to learn that Zach's dad is like a neo-Nazi, and he has this massive collection of Nazi memorabilia. So just masks, weapons, whatever Holocaust stuff.
Which Zach has hilariously turned into a bunch of like bongs.
Yeah,
and stuff
he said
pipes.
he's converted most of it into like pipes and bombs and bongs and stuff, essentially just to like make a point.
Yeah.
And to be a dick, which like, that's fair. That's fine.
Fair, like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The killer shows up at this party and reveals that Rodrigo has a fentanyl addiction. That's the pill that he was taking earlier. And this is right after he and Alex have sort of declared that they have a thing for each other. So their killer shows up with, again, a mask with Rodrigo's face on it, and he tries to get away from them. Everybody's like running out of the party because they're like, fuck, the killer's literally here. Gets chased out into the courtyard and is killed swiftly.
Which, like, at this point, this was where my, like, appreciation for this movie started to go downhill. I'm like, who the fuck is gonna kill the poor kid who has a fentanyl addiction and, like, clear, like, troubles at home?
Yes.
Like, what? Like, what was it I said? I went off on a whole thing where it's like...
You went off on a whole tangent. You were like, this makes no fucking sense. You were just like, I don't understand. The other ones, like, the whole point was that they were shitty people.
Yeah. But what, this guy, like, because he's from, like, a really unfortunate, like, family background, and now he's got a fentanyl addiction to try and take the edge off, like, he deserves to die?
Yeah,
like, what?
No, his death, I find, like, the whole thing is that, like, really, like, this killer, when they're revealed and stuff like that, their logic is janky. Like, it doesn't really work that well, which is part of what doesn't really work very well with the reveal anyway.
That's why y'all got 49% on Rotten Tomatoes.
But yeah, I'm not like in love with that aspect of it. And
was it like that in the book?
If I'm not mistaken, yeah, from what I recall anyway. I believe that this follows the book fairly closely. Like, it's been a while since I've read it, like at least 5 or 6 years, I think. But I remember it being like pretty similar when the movie came out. So obviously everybody's very upset. Now, not only has a curfew been instituted, but they basically shut down the school for a period of time because they're like, okay, we're not, like, this isn't going anywhere good at all. And the police, I don't think, have any leads at all. So now that we've moved into this territory, because Ollie was at the party and people were shitty to him, including Rodrigo, who told him to fuck off, essentially. People are like especially Alex is very loudly like, Ollie's definitely the person who did this. He definitely is the killer, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And at the same time, Makani's beginning to be, like, stalked by this person as well, because there's, like, some stuff that's a little bit off with her, and we've seen her have, like, dreams of, like, trauma flashbacks, and we don't know why. There's just, like, a big bonfire, and you're like, what the fuck are we doing right now?
That also ended up being a bit of a letdown of a storyline, too.
I know. Anyway. Well, there's some things that fall a little bit flat, which I think is part of the problem. When she wakes up at one point in the middle of the night because her door is open, even though she went to bed with it shut, like with a chair wedged under it,
by her bed,
and a knife by her bed. When we don't really understand how the killer managed any of that, but whatever. Here we are. She goes downstairs, and there are several photos plastered in, like, the living room of a person who's obviously been, like, a burn victim, essentially. Not her, but someone else. And then her mugshot pictures. Yeah, that's it. And you're like, okay, something happened, obviously, here. So she's attacked by the killer, who tries to set her on fire, like by throwing accelerant on her and then almost setting her on fire. But Alex shows up last minute.
I will also add, like, the other 2 murders. So, like, the first one, like, he gets his Achilles heel cut. I feel like that's symbolic in some way. Gets stabbed. Second one, poor Rodrigo, like, he's a fentanyl addict and he gets tased in the fountain,
and then his throat slit.
But with this one, it's like, so she burned someone and now she's going to get burned to death. So you're kind of like, okay, like, and then actually I had a minute where I was like, maybe there's 2 killers here.
Well, it could have been a Billy and Stu situation, right? Like, it could have been like a Scream thing, because it does have a little bit of like a Scream kind of essence to it, because there's some like, some jokes and a little bit of meta and some tongue-in-cheek involved in like the script and stuff. Spoiler alert, it's not 2 killers, it's only 1.
I thought it was all of them.
Yeah, at one point,
for a minute.
At one point, she was just like, "It's either this person or it's all of them." Yeah, that would have been kind of fun, actually. Yeah. Anyway, but she manages to get away, and at this point, she's also convinced, because Ollie ran like a background check on her and stuff, because he can access the database, because his brother is obviously not a very good cop.
He's not at all.
No, his taser was missing.
Yeah, he doesn't even ask questions properly in an interrogation.
No, he's terrible. Anyway, so because of this, she's like, no, it's Ollie, even though she didn't actually see this person's face. And you're like, okay, well, okay. Anyway, there's this stupid big corn festival that's happening.
Corn in the USA.
Yeah, oh my God, it's so funny. And that's it. That guy, Zach, his dad, is the one hosting it, and he's hired like private security or whatever.
Yeah, because his whole thing is that he wants to like kill the police department, because he says that they don't do a good enough job. So he wants to kind of remove them completely and just put in private security.
Essentially, yeah. Because he wants to be able to control everything in the town.
Yeah.
And basically being the person who's paying the police force would be a really easy way of doing that, wouldn't it? Yeah. So on that night... Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. No, I'm skipping over a thing. I'm sorry.
You missed a whole moida.
We missed a whole attempted murder, actually.
Moida.
Yeah. Makani goes to the school, and she's, like, looking around. She's trying to figure out, like, who the fuck could possibly be doing this at this point. And she runs into Caleb, who is, like, a bit of a red herring for a minute, because you're like, oh, okay, fuck, is it him? Because he's right there. And then he gets stabbed, and you're like, oops. And then, right as soon as he's stabbed, Ollie is, like, there. Like, he's, like, running. As the killer's running away, and he's just like, oh my God, and he's like trying to help Caleb and calling 911. She's like, holy fucking shit, it's also not him.
Yeah.
And then they realize that this person is going to be going to the corn festival, because everyone's going to be there. What an easy place to take out more of the people in town.
Well, there's an interesting moment where she actually does see the killer, obviously, because he stabs Caleb, and he gives her the knife.
Yes, to make it, because the whole point is to begin to frame her for all of this.
Right.
So they all take off. So Alex and everything and Darby get involved too. And they're all like, okay, no, obviously. So obviously Ollie's not the person who's been doing this. So they all take off to go to the whole corn festival to find Zach, because he's not answering his phone, and save him and get everybody else out of there if they can. And by the time they get there, the killer has already set like half of the cornfield on fire.
Which is nuts.
It's crazy, but it's a really, I guess, good way to kill a bunch of people and cause a bunch of confusion.
And then we had a whole discussion on whether or not this would actually create popcorn.
We did not. Shireen asked one question, and we were all like,
Probably not.
Probably not. No, I feel like they have to be dried out first. I'm pretty sure there's a whole process for making
Probably.
corn. So they drive into the middle of the cornfield to create like space for people to be able to get out. And the Darby and Alex start leading like the football players and stuff who are stuck in the corn maze out completely, so that they're, unharmed. A couple of other people are dead, but they don't matter. And then we get to the center of the maze of all of this, where big developer man is standing there with the killer, who has a mask of his face on, and is just kind of like, hey, I have a family, don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets stabbed right through the head.
Oh, yeah. It's like underworld level shit,
It's pretty brutal. Yeah. With like a saber, essentially, like a little small sword. So he gets stabbed, and then la-di-da, everybody had guessed at this point. At this point, it's revealed that the killer is Zach, who just killed his own father, because he's been wanting to do that for a while. And essentially, his whole spiel is really that's it. He wanted to reveal everybody's a hypocrite and everybody's a piece of shit, and he wanted to take the opportunity to reveal their deep, dark secrets. But it's really insane to me that part of doing that was also murdering them. Like, you could have, if you found all this information, because his family is wealthy, they have means, so obviously he was able to hack into different places and get these people's information and find this stuff. He could have exposed Jackson for beating someone almost to a pulp. He could have exposed Katie for being a neo-Nazi.
He could have found a way to help Rodrigo.
Yeah, well, I mean, he could have exposed him, I guess, if he really wanted to do that. He could have just exposed Makani's shit also without, like, all of these things could have been done, but I'm like, why murder? Like, this feels
I
like a lot.
still just don't understand why we had to kill the kid who has the fentanyl addiction.
That's a lot. I don't know.
Kill the institution that created the fentanyl.
Yeah, I know. I felt bad. I was like, really? You're killing, like, a drug addict, a person who's struggling with substance abuse? Ooh.
Like, you're gonna murder them for being a quote-unquote bad person with big secrets? Like, really?
Yeah, no, not great.
This is where this movie fell flat. Like, it's like, I don't understand the motive. No. And then even if you're like, oh, it's because he wants to expose everybody's secrets, it's like, why kill them, though?
Yeah, that's sort of where you go, where you're like, no. It's unfortunately, I think it does kind of point out that it's a bit of a shaky motive, so it's like, it kind of falls apart in the third act, because you're like, okay, I guess. It's just like, it's like a very, I guess it's like a very immature teenage reason to be doing things.
Well, like, it's obviously just an attention thing, you know, but I was like, you know, like, if you take a step back and you look at, like, motive, this person had zero reason to do any of this, like, of all the people, right?
Yeah,
like,
of course.
With the hazing, like, he wasn't the one who was hazed. Like, he's not even friends with the guy who was hazed. With the girl, it's like, I don't think he had anything to do with her, and, like,
no, not at all.
He wasn't, like, her target audience of, like, filth spewing.
No, well, I mean, he was to an extent, because it was like, follow me, other fellow white people, and
right.
We're
What
better.
I mean is, like, he wasn't the
target of, like, her vitriol in any way, shape, or form.
Like, obviously, you can feel very strongly about somebody speaking that way and want to do something. That's different. But then it's like the kid with the fentanyl still doesn't make any sense. And then, like, trying to kill Caleb. Why would you kill Caleb? Like, what's his secret?
I know. Like, he doesn't have it. Like, you're just killing people.
Now you're just killing people. And then he tries to kill Ollie. Why? What's wrong with Ollie? Like, what did he do? You know? Like,
that's it.
Like, anyway,
it does. It gets really crazy at the end there. So then there is, like, a struggle. That's it. And he gets, and he does stab Ollie, but he's fine. Well, not fine, but he's alive.
He's alive.
And then there is a struggle with Makani, and she's able to kill him. But again, it's like one of those where you're like, I feel like, you know, like all her thing where she's there and she's like, you know, what she points out is correct before she kills him, you know, when she's saying she's there and she's like your reason is bullshit, essentially.
Yeah.
And you're acting like being rich is somehow oppressive for you, like that's fucking stupid. And so, like, those types of things that she's talking about, I'm like, yeah, like, that is stupid, and those are things that should be, like, pointed out.
And
but
she, like, stabs him once, and you're like, yeah, cool, okay, like, you know,
you stopped him.
Yeah. And then she stabs him a second time, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe something going on here.
Like, very aggressively as well.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, because we didn't actually fill it in, her whole trauma background thing is that she was, I think, on the swim team, if I'm not mistaken, at her old school when she was still living in Hawaii. And there was a hazing that happened with the seniors on the team, and they were being really shitty to the girls and stuff like that and doing all this crappy stuff to them. They got them, like, half drunk and stuff. And in the middle of this, like, stupor that she was in, one of the other girls who was there, she pushed her and she accidentally fell into the bonfire that was on the beach where they were.
Absolutely fucking nuts. Like, and it's like, oh yeah, like, she survived, but she had some burn marks on her face. I'm like, how did she survive?
You're like, what do you mean?
Fully into this fire.
Yeah,
anyway.
I found that was actually really badly shot. Like, they should have just showed that she, like, knocked into it and it kind of caught, like, her clothes and stuff on fire, and then she had to roll around on the beach to get rid of it.
But that is not what they showed. They showed that she, like, fully fell into the fire. Yeah.
And I was
okay.
like, look, she took, like, a backwards leap into it. And I was like, I don't think you would be okay after that.
No.
Sure. Also, fun.
How would you get her out? Like, I was sitting there watching this, and I'm like, how would you get her out?
Get her out. My favorite thing about stuff like this, when you're watching something and somebody goes through, like that's it has like a like it's like set on fire, has like a burn or something like that. My favorite things are things like this, and all the photos that we saw after of the girl with like the burn scars on her face and stuff. All her hair is still there.
I know, yeah. It's just slightly like a bit of burn marks.
It's a little bit, just like a little Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah,
like
just a little
there on the side, and you're like,
a bit of mystery, you know.
And you're like,
okay,
all right, yeah. So it's just, I think that's what it is. I think it's just like it's too middle of the road, and it really in that third act of the story just falls completely flat.
Yeah, it's like it just wasn't well thought out. Like it was like, so you had some good characters. Yeah. You had some decent, like, connections being made.
Like an interesting, like, killer, like, you know, the whole mask that looks like the person that they're killing and stuff. You're like, okay.
You know, the first two murders, you're like, all right, like, I'm here for it. Like, we're
going to be exposing these people who are really
like,
crappy.
We're gonna figure out, like, what the link is. And then they kill the kid who's addicted to fentanyl, and I'm like, all right, I'm out.
You're like, okay, I think you've lost me now, because now I'm not, you're like, okay, I sort of understand their motive before, but now you've lost me and I don't understand the motive anymore.
Yeah, and also, like, I don't care to understand their motive, because there's no real good reason for that, you know?
No.
Not that there's a good reason to kill anybody, but...
No, like, none of these people, like we were saying, technically with all of these people, they could have had their quote-unquote secrets exposed without killing them at all at any particular point. So no, it doesn't really make any sense. And it's just like, it's a really shaky, I mean, granted, like, these are like 17-year-old kids, and you're like, I guess that could be some weird logic for like a repressed, rich 17-year-old who's pissed.
I guess.
It just seems, it's just a little bit too shaky when you're watching it. You're like, okay. I think your logic's like
flawed.
A little flawed there, my guy. You know, so it doesn't make for like a great villain or like a great reveal that way. And then, when she kills him really aggressively, you're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. This is weird.
Yeah, like the whole thing was like, it was a little bit like, which Scream was it where she kills the guy and she like stabs him a few times?
Oh, I think it was it the fifth one or something?
Yeah.
When she kills like her boyfriend or whatever there.
Yeah, and like, her
she
dad's
just
like, you know, her phantom person.
And she like really goes off on him, and you're like, and then she like slits his throat really aggressively, and you're like,
okay. This kind of had those vibes, and I was like, I'm just not feeling this movie. Like, I think I said to you at one point, I was like, this movie takes itself way too seriously.
Yeah, you did say that. It's because there are like a good few things. So they do also weave in, because Makani is like a poet, like she writes poetry a lot, and they weave in a lot of that stuff and try to make it like this very sort of philosophical kind of point within the story, and you're like, it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't really matter very much. Actually, we're going to talk about, in a couple weeks, we're going to talk about another series. And in that series, that lead character writes like stories, and there's a fairy tale woven into the story and the show that directly relates to the events and what's taking place, and like the sort of classism that takes place throughout the course of that story, that I think does a much better job than just the poems that they try to like kind of haphazardly throw in here to remind you that that's what she does essentially. So yeah, overall just very middle of the road. I do recall, I think, being like totally fine with the book when I read it, but I think it was also just like a super quick read. Yeah. Got through it fast, and I was like, all right, that was fun. But also like
not memorable.
No, because I've forgotten a lot of it. And I also think that with the book, to a degree, it can be like a little bit easier not to guess who the killer is, because you're not watching the person on screen perhaps
acting like a bit of a maniac.
Yeah, like if you pay attention at the house party before Rodrigo is killed, when they get there and they're like, oh, it's the secret party where we're revealing our secrets.
Yeah.
And they're all asking each other what their secrets are. You know, they ask Makani like what her secret is, and she makes something silly up, and
she says, I write poetry.
Yes, and the camera flashes to Zach, who's like, like you can tell
disappointed.
He's like pissed that she didn't say what the actual thing was.
Yeah, but also like when you think about it, if this killer's entire motive is to like expose secrets, and Zach is hosting a party where you tell your secrets, like there's that. And then like my inkling was just the way that he was acting was like a little like unhinged.
So I think about 2/3 of the way in, when we'd initially watched it, my fiance guessed, because the killer uses a lot of weapons that definitely seem like their period, and they come from that World War II collection that the dad has. And he was like, oh, it's him.
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. He was like, oh, it's him. He was like, yeah, he's got like this sabers and like all this stuff that would have been like of that time period and like war memorabilia essentially that he's using. So he was like, oh, it's him. And I was like, I'm not saying anything. And then we waited, and he was like, I'm correct. But yeah.
I know. I was like, I'm sure it's this guy, and like nobody said anything, and I'm like, I guess I'm completely up to lunch here.
Well, we were gonna give it away. It's more fun this way. You know what? I'd be really curious if anybody's watched this movie, because until I had brought it up, Shireen was like, I have no idea what that is.
I had no idea.
I only knew because I'd read the book, like I said. You can let us know if you've watched it, what your thoughts are and everything over on Instagram, TikTok, or Threads at FullyBookedCA. And you can also check out our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/book was way better. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.